Hi. Today I'll be showing you how to set up a basic Active Directory domain, which will include Active Directory obviously, domain name services, dynamic host control protocol and group policy. So you might just be starting in IT and want to get a bit of hands-on practice using these technologies, or you might be someone that's looking to move on to the next level that's used these quite a lot and wants to see how they're set up and how their inner workings go. So the prerequisites for this, you're going to need at least 6 gig of RAM on your host. That's because you're going to need 2 gig for a Windows 10 client, 2 gig for a Windows Server client, and at least 2 gig free for your host. If you haven't set up VirtualBox or a server virtual machine or a client virtual machine yet, I'll link a playlist that's on my channel and you can go back and see how to do this. You'll also need a relatively recent CPU. So the first thing we're going to do once we've got our Windows 10 client and our Windows Server client is go to the settings of each of these, go into the network section and change the attach to option from NAT to internal network. Whichever name you give this internal network basically is the switch that it's attached to. So if you call it default and you connect both of these to default, they'll both be on the same switch and therefore they can talk to each other over a network. So I'll go ahead and change that for both of these. And I'll go ahead and start both of these up. So now that I'm logged into my server, I'm going to right click the start menu and go to run, enter CMD and then OK to open up a command prompt. I'm going to type in ipconfig and that's going to show me my IP address. You'll notice I've got a 169.254 address there. That's known as an APIPA address, which basically means that this machine isn't able to contact a DHCP server or anything else in order to hand it an IP address. It's just gone to this automatic address, which just means that if, for example, there's a few computers on a switch and nothing else, they're still going to be able to communicate with each other. So if you see this in your sort of day-to-day activities, you know that that's because the machine isn't able to contact DHCP. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set an IP address for the machine manually, known as a static address. And I'm going to go to run again and enter ncpa.cpl. which is going to take me to the network connections. I'm going to double click Ethernet, go to properties, go to Internet Protocol version 4, click use the following IP address, and I'm going to enter the IP address of 192.168.0.1 with a subnet mask of 255.255.255.0, which basically means that this IP subnet goes from 192.168.0.0 to 192.168.0.255. Going to leave the default gateway blank, as these are on a VirtualBox internal network. They're not going to be communicating outside of their network anyway without a router. And for the DNS, as there's only going to be one DNS on this network, and it's going to be this machine, I'm going to enter 127.0.0.1, which is also known as the loopback address, and will say to the machine that it needs to contact itself. I'm going to click OK there, OK and close. And the final thing we need to do to get the machine ready is click run again. Go to sysdm.cpl. Click change. Give the machine name. In this case, I'm just going to give it the same name as the actual virtual machine. And just leave it on workgroup and click OK. And you'll be prompted to restart your machine. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So now that we've rebooted, I'm going to make sure that Server Manager is open. If that's closed, you can access it from the Start menu here. And I'm going to go to Add Roles and Features. And then click Next, Next, Next. And the roles we're going to install are Active Directory Domain Services, DHCP Server, and DNS Server. Then we're going to click next. We don't need any additional features, so just click next, 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 until confirmation. Do not tick restart the destination server automatically, because once these are installed, we're going to promote this server to a domain controller. So just click install. This will take 10 to 15 minutes to get all of those roles installed. So I'm going to grab a coffee. Now that they have installed, I'm going to click on promote this server to a domain controller. I'm going to select add a new forest, and I'm going to give the domain a name. In this case, it's just going to be bite-size networks.local, and then click next. That's just going to take a couple of minutes. Leave the forest functional levels on Windows Server 2016. There's no option for 2019. And enter a restore password, and make sure you make a note of this, because this could be important at some point in the future. Click next. Do not click create a DNS delegation. Click next. Click next again. Leave the paths as they are. Click next, and you'll see the prerequisites check start. This can also take a few minutes. You might see a few warnings in there, but these particular ones are nothing to worry about. You can go ahead and click install. This will probably take around 10 minutes and then reboot. Once it reboots, it's going to take quite a long time for the server to load back up. So I think it's time for another coffee. Right, so that's finished, and we're going to log back into the server. And we're going to run sysdm.cpl again, and we're going to check that that is on the bite-size networks domain, or whichever domain name you entered, which it is. And now that we've done that, we can go into Active Directory, Users and Computers. And we can see that our Active Directory structure is there. What we are going to need to do, just for later, is to go to new Users, right-click New, and then User. And we're just going to create a user called Test. Set a password and untick user must change password at next logon, and then next and finish. So that's Active Directory finished. The next part is DNS, and the good news is, as we've installed DNS, it actually already works. We can see that it's looked up the domain name server 2019 and mapped it back to the correct IP address that we set earlier. What we are going to want to do though is set up a reverse lookup zone so that it can do the opposite. If you ask it to NS lookup an IP address, it'll be able to look up the name for that. It's good practice to get into this habit, because there are certain applications that will try to do this quite a lot. And so we go to the start menu, search for DNS. Click your server and then expand it there and go to reverse lookup zones. Right click that and click new zone and next. That's going to be a primary zone, and click next there, and make sure it's an IPv4 reverse lookup zone. And the network ID is going to be 192.168.0. And just tick reverse lookup zone name there. Click next and finish. And we've got our reverse lookup zone there. The final thing we'll need to set up in DNS is DNS scavenging, so that old records are deleted automatically. So go ahead and right click your server name, set aging scavenging for all zones, tick scavenge stale records, leave the default as 7 days, click OK, and apply these settings to the Active Directory integrated zones. Click OK, and we are done with DNS. So next we'll be looking at DHCP. So we're going to want to go to Start and search for DHCP. And what you're going to notice at first is if you expand the server name, both of those are actually down at the moment. So what we're going to need to do is right click your server name and click authorize. And then if we just hit refresh, you see both of those got a nice green tick on them now. So next go to IPv4. Right click and new scope. Click next. Give the scope a name. So I'm just going to call this default. You probably want to do, in real life, you probably would want to enter a nice name and a nice description to give people a bit more information, but for the purposes of this lab, we'll just go for next. And for the start IP address, enter 192.168.0.1 and an end address of 192.168.0.254, because although the subnet goes from 0 to 255, the 0 is the network address and the 255 is the broadcast address, so those won't be able to be included. You'll see that the length has changed to 24 and the subnet mask 255.255.255.0. Click next, and here we're going to want to add an exclusion for our server, as we don't want that IP address to be handed out because it's a static IP. So we're going to enter 192.168.0.1 to 192.168.0.1 and click add. Then click next and leave the lease as 8 days and click next. And you are going to want to configure the DHCP options now. There's no router, so click next. Parent domain name is fine, and just make sure your server's IP address is in there. Click next on wins, and you do want to activate the scope now. So click finish. And so now we have DHCP enabled. So now that we've got Active Directory, DNS and DHCP set up, it's time to join our client to the domain. So if we switch over to our client PC here and just reboot it. So now that that's rebooted, you'll see straight away it's picked up the bitesizenetworks.local network name from the DHCP scope options. So I'm just going to click yes there. Just double check it in here. That's fine. So if we go back into our command prompt and type ipconfig, we'll see that it's got an IP address from that DHCP address range. And it's got the network name up there as well. If we go back into DHCP on our server, you'll see that on the address leases of that scope, it has now got the desktop. You might need to refresh it there in order to see that, but it's got that desktop in there. So now back on the client, make sure we can ping server 2019, which we can. Enter sysdm.cpl, and we're going to join the domain. So click change, give the machine a name. In this case, it's just going to be the same as my virtual machine name. And under domain, enter the name of the domain that you created earlier. You'll be prompted to enter a username and password. That will just be the same as the administrator credentials from the server. And you'll be prompted to reboot your machine. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So this time when it reboots, you'll notice it hasn't automatically logged in this time. That's because we're now on a domain. So click Other User and enter the credentials of that test user account we created in Active Directory earlier. And Windows is going to go ahead and go through the long Windows 10 first login time. So now that we're logged in, I'm going to go ahead and go to run and open up a command prompt. And I'm going to enter echo %logon server %, and that will print back the name of the logon server, which is correct. We've still got our DHCP IP address. And now if we go back to the server and into DNS, we can see that Win10 has got an IP address assigned to it in there as well, mapping that Win10 name to that IP address, meaning that we can nslookup Win10, and that we picked up there. So now we've got we've finished setting up this home lab. What you're going to want to do now, just as a precaution, if you're going to be experimenting, learning stuff, there's always a chance that you could break things. What you're going to want to do, just to give yourself that peace of mind, is go to both of your servers, both of your virtual machines, I should say. Go to the little menu icon here, go to snapshots, and just take a snapshot of each. And just give it a name and a snapshot description. That'll just take a few seconds to complete. Take a snapshot of the other one. And what this means there is that if you potentially break something or you need to revert back to that state, you can just right click on the name of your snapshot there. The machine does have to be off in order for this option not to be grayed out, and just click restore, and that will just roll back to how it was before. So now you can play around with Active Directory, DNS, DHCP to your heart's content. And as a bonus, because you've installed Active Directory, you also get group policy management, so you can have a go with that as well. If you want to see more videos about test domains and other home labs, leave a comment below, and I'll see you next time.